Hi, everybody. Episode 22 of the Rule Your Pool podcast. I'm your host, Eric Knight with Orenda, and with me today, just like last episode, and for this entire four-part series, Joe Swayze, our VP of Sales. Joe, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody.
So today, we're going to cover pillar number 2. All right, last episode was pillar 1. You can guess the next episode is going to be pillar 3. Pillar 2 is about non-living organics. It's about the oxidant demand, and there's so many different rabbit holes that we could go down, and stay with us. We're going to try to step over all of them and mention them, but not get stuck, taking the red pill and learning all about ORP and things like that. So those are future episodes for a future day. Yeah, this time. This is the second recording. Seems to be a theme with the Rule Your Pool podcast, Joe, where we record it once and then some technical difficulty happens. And well, here we are again. So, hey, thank you so much for being here. We actually do enjoy this. This podcast is actually the highlight of my day. It really is. So thank you for being listeners. Episode 22, pillar number 2. Let's get into it. Welcome to Rule Your Pool, the podcast by Orenda that explains and simplifies pool chemistry so that anybody, regardless of experience, can understand it. I'm your host, Eric Knight, bringing clarity to these subjects so that you can bring clarity to your water. If you're ready to rule your pool, then let's go. Okay, Joe, pillar number 2, non-living organics. Before you came to Orenda, what were your thoughts on all of this stuff?
Just dead stuff in the pool. That's kind of what I thought. Like, you hear non-living organics, you just think, really didn't even think that much of it. Stuff
body oils, grease, all sorts of stuff, right? Well, as it turns out, chlorine has a lot of responsibilities in swimming pools. Now, the main reason we have chlorine in our water, of course, is to be a sanitizer. It's to be a disinfectant. It's to kill things, bad things, right? Germs, viruses, bacteria, the Rona. It's there to kill all of these harmful things to keep your water clean and safe. But it's also there to kill other living contaminants like algae, right? Chlorine is an outstanding algicide. The problem that you have is there's a lot more than just germs and algae in your pool. In fact, those two things make up a very small percentage of the contaminants in your pool. And I say that with the exception of when your water gets eutrophied, and that's when you have an abundance of nutrients and your algae rate exceeds the killing rate of your chlorine and your pool starts to flip green. That's an exception. But 99% of the cases, you're really fighting more of an oxidant demand than you are a sanitizer demand. And the difference between them is a sanitizer demand is killing living things. The oxidant demand is all non-living things. And Joe, there's 3 categories of oxidants. The first 2 are very, very small relative to the behemoth, which is the focus of pillar number 2. Those first 2 categories of oxidants are metals, like iron or copper or manganese, and then nitrogen compounds. Now, chlorine has to oxidize these things. And what oxidation means, actually, Joe, what does oxidation mean? I feel like I'm quizzing you.
Yeah, oxidation, So oxidation, we were just talking about a little bit ago. It's your oxidation, you're gaining an electron. You're losing the electron. Reduction is gaining the electron. So it's basically, oxidizing the form of that chemistry.
So it's a loss of electrons, yeah. So chlorine takes electrons from something, because in this case, chlorine is the oxidizer. It takes electrons, and electrons have a negative charge, and that negative charge reduces chlorine. Okay, this is why your chlorine gets used up on the oxidant demand. So if you're oxidizing iron, you take the electrons from iron, you reduce chlorine in the process, and then you convert, I think it's ferrous oxide into ferric oxide, or maybe I have that backwards. I'm not the chemist. All I know is that iron turns brown or orange. Am I backwards on that, Joe? Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, just my luck. Listen, audience out there, if you're a chemist and I get hate mail from you, I'll find out where you live. No, I'm just kidding. The point is, we know that iron oxidizes, right? Copper will oxidize and it'll turn into stains. It'll go bluish green, maybe hard green, maybe it'll tinge your water. All of these things happen because of oxidation, but metals do not live. All right. They are oxidants. And fortunately, even in the Great Lakes where Joe is, where there's a ton of iron in the water, it's still a very small percentage of your oxidant demand. Okay, it's a slim margin, even if you have a lot of it. Now, it can be a big problem because it'll look really bad and it'll consume some chlorine, but it's nothing like the next two categories. Okay, the next category is nitrogen compounds, specifically ammonia and urea. This comes from people peeing in the pool primarily. There is a little bit in sweat, but other sources of ammonia include things like deck cleaners that contain ammonia. These are often overlooked, and I could tell you stories about that, but I think we're going to do an entire series dedicated to just this topic: nitrogen compounds, combined chlorine, breakpoint chlorination. It's a really dense chemistry that I want to break out into several episodes and simplify it. But just know that nitrogen compounds, specifically ammonia and urea, are much harder to get out of water. It takes a lot of chlorine to oxidize these things, and there's nothing else to get them out of water except specialized filters. It is it's difficult, and this is where you get the term combined chlorine, because in order to oxidize ammonia, you have to have chlorine combine with that molecule, and then you get these things called chloramines. And there's a lot of different variations. I mean, pure ammonia becomes monochloramine, and then dichloramine, then trichloramine, and that creates the pool smell that creates air quality problems in indoor pools. But there's also just...
And bather irritation.
Yeah, bather irritation. I mean, I got really sick from it. That's actually why I'm in this pool industry, is because I was a competitive swimmer, and I have permanent lung damage as a result of it. And that's actually the reason I'm in this industry, is to fix that problem. So it's very personal for me, and I would like to expand on that in future episodes, really break that down into what the chemistry is actually doing. It's quite fascinating and also disgusting. But that said, ammonia is usually a very small contributor of the oxidant demand as well, especially in backyard pools. Now, in commercial pools, that's a different thing, because you have a huge bather load, like swim schools, water parks, YMCAs, swim teams. It's a much bigger percentage in those pools because you have the bather load. So keep that in mind. But backyard pools residentially, this is a very slim part of your chlorine demand.
Unless you have a dog swimming in your pool, which equals several humans swimming in your pool. So if you have a dog park in your backyard, well, now you've got a commercial pool.
Well, yeah, that's true. But that's more of the third category, unless the dogs are peeing, because specifically nitrogen.
And they are.
Oh, they are. Oh, yeah, they do.
Every time.
They do.
They can't help it.
Well, hey, that was my excuse for many years, but don't judge me. I'm sorry. That was over. I was out of line, Joe. I was out of line.
Was that over the top?
That was over.
I think it might have been.
Well, it's for the audience. It's for their
That's
benefit.
all right. Yeah.
I was a competitive swimmer. Good luck changing the culture. Okay, so you got these small categories, metals and nitrogen compounds. But now let's talk about the bulk of chlorine's responsibility, okay? And when I say bulk, I mean well over 90% of the contaminants in your water are non-living organics. The term organic indicates carbon. These are carbon chain materials: oils, body butter, grease, dead skin cells, hair. Not that chlorine is going to completely oxidize hair out of your pool, but it's certainly going to bleach it out, and it's going to take the oils out of it. And the natural ones are like mucus, sweat, things like that. But those are relatively simple to oxidize. The complex non-living organics are the ones that are man-made: lotion, deodorant, soaps, cosmetics. Lipstick is a big one. Not that there's a lot of lipstick in pools, but it's a complex thing. Makeup. And then the Mac Daddy of all of them is sunscreen. It takes a lot of chlorine to get rid of these things. So oftentimes in an outdoor pool, you can see sort of an oil slick glistening on the surface of your pool. And eventually, since oils rise, remember that little experiment we did in elementary school? You put cooking oil in the water, it goes right to the top. Oils rise, they're going to stick to your tile line. And this is a scum line. And this can have some calcification there where water evaporates and calcium's left behind. But you also have organics, so it's sticky, it's disgusting, pollen, dirt, debris, it's all disgusting. But that is driven by non-living organics. Chlorine was not designed to get rid of these things. We burden chlorine with them, like chlorine has to, and it will eventually, but just throwing a lot of chlorine at this problem is not an effective way of getting rid of oils, okay? It's just not. You could just nuke your pool with chlorine and superchlorinate and shock and shock and shock. You're still going to have that scum line. Commercial pool owners already know this. A lot of backyard pool owners already know this too, because there's only so much chlorine can do against things like sunscreen. It's not made to get rid of it. Then there's secondary systems, right? And we're going to get to that in just a second. But basically, pillar number 2 is making you aware that the vast majority of your contaminants are not things that chlorine was really designed to get rid of, non-living organics. And the action step for this pillar is to simply supplement your chlorine against them. Now, there's 2 ways you can do this. You can do a secondary oxidizer system. Notice I didn't say secondary system in general. I said oxidizer because we're talking about the oxidant demand. These systems include ozone and AOP. And to some degree, hyperdissolved oxygen, even though HDO itself does not oxidize, it accelerates chlorine's ability to. It helps chlorine oxidize more efficiently. Those things help a lot. Ozone is an incredibly powerful oxidizer, and I believe AOP hydroxyl radicals are even faster. I don't know the exact science there, but I know that they smash through sunscreen. I mean, they destroy oxidants very, very effectively, but their weakness is they are point of contact systems. In other words, they can only treat what they touch, and that's in the circulation system. And then you have a contact tank, and you don't have a residual of ozone or hydroxyl radicals. Where we come in, shameless plug. Well, it's not. It's our podcast. What are we talking about? Yeah, we're going to talk. It's enzymes. We make enzymes. And a lot of companies make enzymes, and we make them for a reason. And it's not just in the swimming pool business. Enzymes are used in wastewater, drinking water, cooling towers. They're used in a lot of different applications because they are extremely effective at breaking down certain things. Ours is made specifically for non-living organics. Our enzymes love sunscreen. They devour it. They devour cosmetics. They devour all of these organics that are in your water, non-living organics, by the way, that are in your water, and they make it much easier and take an enormous burden off of chlorine. Okay, this is not a product-based podcast. This is an education podcast. But the whole point of pillar number 2 is to make sure that you are giving your water a chance to be clean and clear so that chlorine is not used up on harmless stuff. You know, they're still nasty, but it's harmless. So that chlorine can focus on the dangerous stuff, the diseases, the germs, the bacteria. That's where we need chlorine to be there. And if it gets used up fighting sunscreen, you don't have enough of it to actually kill the germs. Chlorine's just going to oxidize or kill whatever it touches. It's blind. It doesn't take really preference to one or the other. Joe, do you want to chime in here?
No, I think you absolutely are right here. It's the heavier the bather load too, the more our enzymes shine, the more you need enzymes. So it's a really important step.
Mm-hmm. And I would say it's kind of hard to measure because you can't measure the residual like parts per million of enzymes, or at least we don't know how to. That being said, you can tell when they're working or when they're not. I can go and I can touch a pool with my fingers, not even get in the pool, and I can tell you if it has our enzymes in it or not. There's a feel to the water that's different. And what it's doing is it's a catalyst. It's an amino acid that basically breaks things apart. It breaks apart carbon chains. Okay? It devours them. It converts those carbon chain organics into CO2, which off gases out of the pool and leaves. It doesn't get jammed in your filter. It extends your filter cleaning cycles so that you don't have to clean your cartridge every single month. You know, maybe it's 2 months, or maybe it becomes 3, 4, 5 months. We've seen people that clean once a year. Enzymes are not necessarily required for pools, but the heavier the bather load, the better they perform. So we recommend purging once a year, and a purge is an initial dose to build up a residual once a year at the beginning of the season. And then you can maintain if you've got that bather load, or you can switch to something like a clarifier just to maintain some enzymes throughout your summer. This is how you supplement your chlorine against this major oxidant demand. And like Joe said, the busier the bather load, the more important they are. If you barely ever use your pool, you probably don't need them. Chlorine could probably handle what you're putting in there. But there's one other instance here that I want to cover, and that's wildfires. Joe, when wildfires take over the West Coast, which they do seemingly every year, what are the primary ingredients in smoke and soot and ash?
Well, carbon, right? So, you've got a lot of that in there. You have it depends on what it's burning, but you've got phosphates, you've got nitrogen, you've got those things that are basically needed to grow anything. So nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium.
They regenerate the soil
and landing in your pool.
Yep.
So it's great for those, when they're doing a controlled burn to kind of re-nutrify the soils. And that's what's happening when you have that wildfire nutrifying your pool.
Enzymes and phosphate removers are awesome if you're dealing with, if you can see the smoke, if you can smell the smoke, it's getting into your pool too. And it's happening at a very light rate. But, some people get a ton of ash. Well, if that's the case, you probably need to drain your pool anyway. But if you're just getting that haze, you've got algae coming, because now you've got a all-you-can-eat buffet of nutrients, and you got to get those things out of the water. Enzymes shine against wildfires, and so do phosphate removers. But phosphates we'll talk about in the next episode. What I really wanted to cover here was simply dealing with the oxidant demand appropriately instead of just throwing a whole bunch of chlorine at the problem. Because especially right now, it's 2021, even the mainstream news just picked up the story that we're in the most massive chlorine shortage in history. You can't just throw a ton of chlorine at this problem. We need to make chlorine more efficient so that we can have, so we can have enough of it to do what it really was meant to do, and that's to kill germs. So, Joe, is there anything else that you want to add before we go?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. If we add anything else now, it'll just be more confusing. So,
yeah, well, we're going to do other episodes. Yeah, because the last time we recorded this, as if we could be more complex, boy, oh boy, did we go down some rabbit holes on ORP and electron transfer and, oh gosh, future episodes. So buckle up, but not coming for soon. Now. So we'll put that on the back burner. We'll get to them eventually. Thank you so much for listening. It means so much to us. I mean that personally, because I've never done a podcast before, and this is our first time in this. And Joe, I'm grateful that you're here. We got you a nice microphone now. You sound much better rather than the AirPods.
Hey, I'm glad to be doing it the right way now. So
yeah,
hopefully that means I get to be invited more often.
Oh, for sure. Well, certainly for the next 2 episodes. So it really is awesome. If you need support with your swimming pool, this whole podcast is about ruling your pool, not just ruling a pool. It's your pool, how you want to maintain your water, right? Do you want to be over-treating your water, throwing a whole bunch of chlorine at a problem that it wasn't made to fix? That's the number one way people over-treat. Then they'll throw in a whole bunch of other products, and then they chase pH, and they do all sorts of other stuff, and they spend way more money on chemicals than they should, and they don't get the results that they really want. Following us and listening to what we say is going to teach you a philosophy of minimalism. It's going to teach you a philosophy of treating the water the way that water needs to be treated, based on what water needs, not what a textbook tells you should force water to do. If we address these problems at their source effectively up front, you're not going to have those problems down the road. And that's what we're all about. And this is the whole series here on the 4 pillars. The last episode we talked about the LSI. LSI management is huge. This is huge, especially if you have a big bather load. So if you can effectively deal with your oxidant demand, you are well on your way to better water. Next episode, we're going to cover our 3rd pillar, which is phosphate removal, and our final episode will be pillar 4, minimal CYA. We look forward to having you there. If you are getting value out of this, please share this with your friends. Tap that subscribe button. Like us on Facebook, Orenda Technologies. We really appreciate it. Anything else, Joe?
No. Thank you for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Rule Your Pool, a podcast by Orenda Technologies. For more information on what we discussed in this week's episode, check the links in the description or visit www.orendatech.com.
I hope you find this show valuable enough that you tap that subscribe button and share it with your friends. You can also like us on Facebook and social media. And with our help, you'll be able to rule your pool without over-treating it with chemicals and wasting money. I'll see you next episode.